It was a rainy afternoon. The kind of weather that makes you feel like the world is conspiring against you. I had just finished an exhausting meeting at my current job and was rushing to get to my new workplace at Grayson Enterprises. My phone was my last lifeline. But of course, just as I was trying to open the Uber app, it died. No signal, no power, and no way to get to my meeting. It was just perfect timing, wasn't it? Standing there, soaked to the bone, I shoved the phone into my bag, praying it would somehow revive itself. But of course, it didn't. The umbrella I was holding did absolutely nothing to shield me from the downpour. My nerves were frayed. I had to get to Grayson Enterprises for the CEO's presentation. It was important, and if I was late, I was probably going to be fired before I even signed my contract. I looked around hopelessly, my heart racing, thinking about the meeting I was about to miss. That's when I saw it. A black car pulled up right in front of me, its sleek exterior shining even in the rain. I didn't even think twice. Without hesitation, I opened the door and hopped in, already rambling without realizing it. "I'm late. Go, go, go," I shouted to the driver, already talking a mile a minute. "I have to make it to the new CEO's presentation at Grayson Enterprises. If I'm late, I'm probably fired before I even sign the contract." I didn't look at the driver, didn't check to see who it was. The panic was overwhelming, and I just wanted to get there. The driver didn't respond. He didn't even glance at me, just drove, his eyes fixed straight ahead. The silence between us was suffocating, but I couldn't stop talking. I know this sounds crazy. I laughed nervously, but my alarm didn't go off. My coffee burned my tongue. And on top of that, I'm wearing mismatched socks. I lifted the hem of my pants and showed him my ridiculous socks, one with Christmas penguins, the other with tacos. Ridiculous, right? But honestly, it was one of those days. The words just kept tumbling out. Anyway, I've got this job lined up at Grayson Enterprises. I've got to get there. If I can just get there on time, I might actually have a chance. No pressure, right? I chuckled awkwardly, but the driver just kept his eyes on the road, not reacting at all. It was getting uncomfortable. "Thanks, though," I added, forcing a smile. "You're a lifesaver." Or, a very quiet Uber driver. Still nothing. He didn't say a word. Not one. We reached the company building, and the car slowed as it neared the curb. "Thanks again," I said, forcing a smile. I barely registered his expression as I rushed out of the car. My nerves frazzled, but before I could step away, I turned back to thank him one last time. And that's when I saw it. He was already looking straight ahead, his expression unchanged, as if the entire interaction meant nothing to him. I rushed into the building, trying to shake off the embarrassment of the ride. My heart was racing, and I couldn't get the image of his face out of my mind. The fact that I had ordered him around like an Uber driver when I didn't even know who he was. Yeah, that wasn't going to be easy to forget. I made it to the elevator just in time, nearly missing the doors as they started to close. Someone was kind enough to hold them open for me. I was about to meet the CEO. I just had a close encounter with him in a car. But now, I had to stand face to face with him in a professional setting. I was shaking, trying to calm my breath as I followed my team into the conference room. When the doors to the conference room opened, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. There he was, Liam Grayson, the man I had just embarrassed myself in front of, now standing at the front of the room, ready to address everyone. He looked even more imposing now, his suit crisp, his posture perfect. He had a way of commanding attention without saying a word. Then, as if the universe wanted to make this moment even worse, he turned his eyes to me, and when his gaze landed on me, my heart stopped. The world seemed to stop for a second. His gaze locked onto me, and suddenly, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of discomfort. Everyone else in the room seemed to vanish, and all I could focus on was those gray eyes. So cold, so focused. The silence stretched longer than it should have. And then, just as I felt like I might sink into the floor, he spoke. "I hope my arrival didn't catch anyone off guard," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. His eyes never left me as he continued. especially those who mistook me for an Uber driver. The room went quiet, and I swear I could feel every pair of eyes on me. My heart was pounding, my palms were sweating, and I was pretty sure my face had turned 50 shades of red. I forced myself to stand still, pretending I wasn't about to faint from embarrassment. It was like the universe had chosen this moment to publicly humiliate me. But Liam didn't seem fazed. He simply moved on with his speech, like nothing had happened. But as he spoke, I couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. He knew everything. The meeting went on, but my mind couldn't focus. All I could think about was how I had treated the CEO like some random driver, rambling about my awful day, and then the way he had casually dropped that bombshell about the Uber ride. When the meeting finally ended, I rushed out of the room as quickly as I could, desperate to escape the awkwardness. But before I could slip away, Liam's voice stopped me. "Miss Stone," he called, his tone calm but filled with a hint of amusement. I turned slowly, dreading what would come next. "I hope you're not too embarrassed," he said, stepping toward me. "You've got some spunk, I'll give you that, but don't worry, I won't hold the Uber driver incident against you." My brain couldn't process what he was saying. I forced out a nervous laugh. I'm fine," I stammered, trying to seem like I wasn't on the verge of dying from embarrassment. "Thanks for understanding." He didn't say anything more. He simply gave me a small nod and walked away. But the tension hung in the air like a thick fog. The rest of the day went by in a blur, but I couldn't get the image of Liam Grayson out of my head. How was I supposed to act now? Had he already forgotten about what happened? Or was he secretly judging me the day after the meeting? Everything felt off. My heart was still racing from that awkward moment with Liam Grayson in the conference room. How had I let that happen? I was supposed to be impressing him, not embarrassing myself. But the worst part, Liam Grayson hadn't mentioned the Uber incident after that. Not once. He didn't even acknowledge it. And it felt like I was walking around with this giant elephant in the room that no one was willing to address. The silence from him made it worse. Was he trying to forget it? Or was he just so focused on work that he didn't care about the embarrassing exchange? I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal. It was just a moment. Just a fluke. But the thing was, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His gray eyes, his calm composure, the way he held the room with just his presence. I couldn't explain it, but there was something about him that stuck with me. The next morning, I walked into the office, trying to shake off the lingering awkwardness. I told myself that I was going to focus on the work ahead. Not let my nerves take over. And most definitely not think about Liam Grayson. But, of course, he was everywhere. As I sat at my desk, organizing papers and responding to emails, I couldn't help but feel his presence looming. I could almost feel his eyes on me whenever I passed by his office door. But every time I tried to glance inside, he was either in a meeting or buried in paperwork. I never got a chance to speak with him. Then came the email, the dreaded email. It was from Liam Grayson himself. "Miss Stone, I've reviewed your report. Please come to my office at 3 p.m. to discuss further." That was it. No pleasantries. No, "I hope you're well." Just straight to business. 3 p.m. I glanced at the clock. I had exactly 2 hours to prepare myself. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. He was my boss, and this was just a standard meeting. Nothing personal. But as the time passed, the tension in my chest grew. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than usual. My palms were clammy, and I kept reminding myself to breathe, to act calm, to be professional. But how could I be calm when every fiber of my being was screaming that something big was coming? When I finally reached his office, I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Come in," his voice called from inside. I opened the door and stepped in, trying to keep my composure. There he was, sitting at his desk, a stack of papers in front of him, his serious expression never wavering as he glanced up at me. He looked the same, the confident CEO I had been warned about. The one who took no nonsense. But something was different. "Miss Stone," he greeted, his voice a little less formal than usual, like there was an unspoken understanding between us that neither of us was willing to address directly. Please, take a seat. I did as told, sitting across from him. His eyes never left mine, studying me carefully, as if trying to read me. I've gone over your report. It's good, he said, his tone approving but distant. However, there's a section on market analysis that I think needs more depth. We need to show a clear picture of our competitive edge. I nodded, trying to focus on the task at hand. This was a business conversation, a chance to prove myself. But then, as he leaned forward to pass me a new set of papers, I saw something flicker in his eyes. It was subtle, so subtle that I almost thought I imagined it. A small glimmer of something that wasn't entirely professional. Curiosity, and then, just like that, the moment passed. He went back to business, explaining the changes he wanted to see in the report. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was studying me, trying to figure out something that was hidden behind the professional demeanor. The meeting ended with a handshake, and I left his office with my head spinning. What was that? As the day went on, I found myself wondering whether I had imagined it. Was there a shift in how Liam saw me? Or was I just overthinking things? He was my boss. He had every right to be distant. Right, still, that brief look, that slight shift in his gaze, it lingered in my mind. The next day was the company's quarterly review meeting. It was packed with employees, stakeholders, and, of course, Liam Grayson. I wasn't directly involved in the presentation, but as I entered the conference room, I noticed something strange. There was a tension in the air, more so than usual. I could feel it before I even saw Liam. He stood at the front of the room, going over the results for the quarter with his usual precision. But this time, there was something different about the way he carried himself. It wasn't just business, there was a subtle shift. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the slides on the screen in front of me, but I couldn't help but glance at him. There he was, scanning the room, his eyes lingering on certain people for a little too long. When his gaze caught mine, I quickly looked away, but not before I saw the smallest twitch of a smile. Did he remember? I couldn't focus on the meeting. I kept thinking about that moment in his office yesterday, how it felt like he was trying to see behind the walls I had built up. And then I wondered, was he really that serious about business? Or was there something more? After the meeting, I tried to slip out quietly, hoping for a few moments of peace. But just as I reached the door, I heard it. Miss Stone. I turned to find Liam standing by the door, his hands in his pockets, looking as calm and composed as always. Can you stay for a moment? He asked, his voice steady, but there was something in it that made me hesitate. It wasn't business this time. I nodded slowly and walked back into the room, my heart pounding. What now? Liam turned toward me, and this time, there was no denying the slight smile that tugged at the corners of his lips. You've been doing great work lately, he said, his tone softening just a bit. I wanted to make sure you're handling the pressure well. We've got some big things ahead. Thank you, I said, trying to hide the nervousness in my voice. I'm handling it. I want to prove I'm capable. He stepped closer, looking at me like he was weighing every word he spoke. You don't need to prove anything to me, Grace. Just keep being yourself. It was a simple statement, but something about it hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. I was speechless for a moment, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. Then, he turned and walked toward the door, the moment disappearing as quickly as it had come. The days following the quarterly review were a blur. Work had become a whirlwind of reports, meetings, and tasks, but I couldn't help but feel the weight of what happened after that meeting, when Liam Grayson had looked at me differently. It wasn't just professional anymore. I kept telling myself I was overthinking things. He was my boss, that was it. He was probably just doing what any CEO would do, keep tabs on their employees. Yet, every time our paths crossed, my heart would race, my palms would sweat, and I'd find myself glancing over my shoulder to make sure he wasn't watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. One afternoon, I was sitting at my desk, typing up a report, when my phone buzzed with an email. It was from Liam Grayson. Miss Stone, please come to my office. 2 p.m. sharp. No subject line, no pleasantries, just, Business. I tried to act casual. But deep down, my heart was already pounding. It felt like I was walking straight into the storm, not knowing if I'd come out unscathed. I had barely settled my nerves when the clock hit 2 p.m. I grabbed my notepad, took a deep breath, and walked down the hall to his office. When I knocked and entered, Liam was sitting at his desk, flipping through some papers. For a brief moment, it felt like we were back to the professional distance. But something about the air between us felt charged. "Miss Stone," he greeted, his eyes locking onto mine. But there was something different in his gaze. Something almost personal. "I need to discuss the new campaign with you," he said, without wasting time. "I want you to take the lead on it. You're sharp, you're focused, and you have the vision we need." I swallowed hard. This was big. A lead role on the campaign. The kind of opportunity that would solidify my position at Grayson Enterprises. But why did it feel like there was more to this than just business? I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course, I'll make sure everything is perfect." Liam stood up and walked toward the whiteboard on the far side of the room. Outlining the basics of the project, he explained what needed to be done, how it would impact the company, and the timeline. I listened intently, but my mind kept drifting back to the look he had given me earlier, that look of recognition. Almost like he was seeing through me. As he spoke, I felt the distance between us shrinking. His voice was steady, but I noticed the small pauses when he glanced at me. Each time, the tension between us thickened. Finally, he stopped speaking and turned to face me. "I trust you can handle this, Grace," he said, the words so simple, yet heavy with meaning. I took a breath. "I won't let you down." But Liam didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped a little closer, his expression unreadable, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something I couldn't quite decipher. The silence stretched out between us, and I felt my heart racing in my chest. Was he going to say something else? Did I imagine the way he looked at me? Was it just my imagination? Or was there something there? Before I could say anything, Liam took a step back and returned to his desk. Breaking the moment. "Let's keep the details simple for now," he said, "but this is your chance to show everyone what you're capable of." I nodded quickly. "Thank you, I won't disappoint you." As I walked out of his office, I tried to calm my racing heart. What was happening? Every time I thought I had a grasp on what this was, Liam would do something, say something, that left me questioning everything. I had just been given a huge opportunity. But why did I feel like the real challenge wasn't the campaign itself but the space between me and him? The next few days were a blur of preparation for the campaign. But even as I dove into the project, trying to make sense of the overwhelming task ahead, I couldn't escape the thought of Liam Grayson, the man who was now more than just my boss, but someone who had somehow wormed his way into my thoughts, my emotions, and even my heart. It wasn't until the following Friday that things really began to shift. It started like any other day. I was working through a stack of reports when I received an unexpected message from Liam Grayson. "I need you to join me for a meeting. The partners want to hear your thoughts on the campaign." My stomach dropped. The partners? I had never met them. This was the big leagues. My hands were shaking slightly as I prepared for the meeting. I threw on my jacket, trying to pull myself together. When I arrived at his office, I knocked, and Liam opened the door himself. "You're here. Good," he said with a small smile. For the first time, he wasn't as serious. His tone was almost warm. He stepped aside, letting me in. The partners were already seated, a group of well-dressed professionals discussing the details of the upcoming project. They all looked up when I entered, and I immediately felt the weight of their gazes. But Liam wasn't just the CEO now, he was also my ally. As I took my seat next to him, I couldn't help but notice how different things felt. There was a strange comfort in his presence, a silent reassurance that no matter how much pressure I felt, he was there. The meeting was a blur of questions, ideas, and strategies. I spoke confidently about the campaign, presenting my vision clearly. Every now and then, Liam's eyes would catch mine, and I'd feel that familiar knot in my stomach. But this time, the tension wasn't just because of the work. There was something more, something unspoken. After the meeting, as the partners left, Liam turned to me. "You did well," he said, his voice soft, but with that same intensity. "I knew you had it in you." I smiled, trying to hide the growing warmth in my chest. "Thank you, I couldn't have done it without your support." Liam studied me for a long moment before speaking again. "Grace, I need you to know something. I think you've got more than just potential. I think you're exactly what this company needs." I was taken aback. Was he complimenting me, or was there something more to it? Before I could process the words, he added, "Don't let anyone make you doubt that." And then, as quickly as the moment had come, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, completely lost in thought. The week after the meeting with the partners was a whirlwind. The campaign was progressing, but even amidst the chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between Liam Grayson and me. I couldn't pinpoint what it was. The way he'd looked at me during the meeting, the lingering glances, the almost unspoken moments we shared. They were starting to pile up in my mind. But I told myself to focus. This was my opportunity. If I did well, I'd solidify my position at Grayson Enterprises, and everything else would fall into place. That was the plan, right? But life had a funny way of throwing in a few curveballs when you least expected it. It was a Thursday afternoon when it happened. I had just finished preparing some final slides for the campaign presentation the next day when I received a message from Liam. "Grace, I need you to meet me in my office in 10 minutes. There's something I need to discuss with you." That was all it said. Short, cryptic, and oddly urgent. I felt my stomach churn. What did he want to talk about? I had prepared everything for the presentation, but the feeling that something was about to change kept gnawing at me. I had no idea what to expect, but I couldn't ignore the fact that I was once again walking into his office with that familiar sense of anticipation. I made my way down the hall, my steps quickening as I neared his door. I knocked, and Liam's voice immediately called out, "Come in." When I entered, I found him standing by the window, his back to me. For a moment, he didn't say anything, and I just stood there, waiting. Liam didn't turn around. "I wanted to speak with you about something personal," he said quietly. There was an edge to his voice I hadn't heard before, something a little vulnerable. My heart skipped a beat. "Personal?" I stood there, unsure of how to respond. Was this about the campaign? Did I mess something up? Or was it something else? He finally turned around, his expression serious but thoughtful. "Grace, I know you've been working hard on the campaign, and I've been impressed with your progress," he began, his voice steady but laced with something else. "But there's something I need to admit." I swallowed hard, trying to read his face, but I couldn't make sense of it. Was he about to fire me? Or was this another test? Another challenge I had to overcome? Liam took a deep breath. "The truth is, this isn't just about the campaign," he said, taking a step closer. "I've been watching you, not just as an employee, but as a person." I froze. The air between us felt charged now, like there was an electric current that I couldn't avoid. He looked at me with a mixture of something I couldn't quite place, admiration, maybe, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made me feel like he was seeing me in a way I had never expected. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but you've become important to me, Grace," he continued, his voice softening, "not just because of your work, but because of who you are, the way you carry yourself, the way you handle pressure, the way you're not afraid to be yourself in a world that expects you to be perfect all the time. It's something I admire." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. I wasn't sure what to say. Was this real? Was he just saying this to keep me motivated? But no, this felt different. His words were sincere. I cleared my throat, trying to find my voice. "Liam, I started, but he held up a hand, stopping me. "Wait," he said softly, "let me finish." I nodded, my heart pounding, waiting for him to continue. "I'm not someone who's easy to figure out," he admitted, taking another step closer. "I've spent my life building this company, controlling every little detail, but when I met you, I realized something about myself. You've made me feel things I've never felt before, things I thought I could ignore. He paused for a moment, his eyes never leaving mine. I could feel my pulse quickening. I don't want to overcomplicate this, Grace, he said, the vulnerability in his voice finally breaking through. But I think I'm starting to fall for you. I don't know what I expected. But it definitely wasn't this. His confession hit me like a freight train. I stood there, stunned, trying to process what he had just said. Liam Grayson, the serious, meticulous CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, was telling me that he had feelings for me. This couldn't be real, right? But the way he was looking at me, the way his voice trembled with that honesty, told me that this wasn't some calculated move. He was opening up to me. I don't expect anything from you, he added quickly, almost as if he had read my thoughts. I just needed you to know. I'm not the kind of man who wears his heart on his sleeve. But when it comes to you, I can't ignore it anymore. I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing. The last thing I expected from this conversation was this. I don't know what to say, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not sure I can. I mean, you're my boss. I've worked so hard to get here, and I don't know if it's a good idea for us to be involved like this. Liam took a deep breath and nodded slowly. I understand, he said softly, but I needed to be honest with you. Whatever happens, I don't want this to affect your work. If you choose to walk away from this, I'll respect that, but I had to tell you how I feel. There was a long silence between us. Neither of us moved, both of us caught in the weight of what had just been said. Finally, I looked at him, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what's going to happen, Liam, but this is a lot to process. I know, he said, his tone soft and understanding. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. The rest of the day felt like a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what Liam had said. His words replayed in my mind over and over again, but I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with them. This wasn't just about work anymore. This was personal, and I had no idea where it would lead. The following days were nothing short of a blur. After Liam's confession, I was left in a whirlwind of confusion. The moment replayed in my head over and over again. Liam Grayson had admitted his feelings for me, a man who had always maintained an air of control, precision, and indifference. And here he was, vulnerable and open in a way I had never expected. It felt like a lot to process. I spent the next few days avoiding eye contact with him. The tension was unbearable. Every time we passed each other in the hallways, I felt like he could read the uncertainty in my eyes. The last thing I wanted was for things to get awkward at work. Work, after all, was where I had come to make a name for myself. But now I couldn't shake the thought of him. It was a Friday afternoon when the opportunity to confront him finally came. I had just finished reviewing some campaign details when I saw Liam walk past my office. I knew he had seen me, and for the first time, I couldn't let it go. I needed answers. I stood up from my desk, my heart racing as I made my way down the hall. I knocked on his door, twice. A little unsure, a little hesitant. "Come in," his voice called, deep and steady. I opened the door and stepped inside. He was sitting at his desk, typing away, the usual seriousness to his demeanor. But when he looked up and saw me, the tension in his eyes softened. "Grace," he said, nodding slightly, "what can I do for you?" I could feel my hands shaking, my pulse quickening, but I couldn't leave things hanging. I couldn't pretend anymore. "Liam," I started, my voice steady but full of uncertainty. "About what you said in your office the other day." He immediately stopped what he was doing. Standing up slowly, "I meant every word," he said quietly, his gaze never leaving mine. "I don't know what to think," I admitted. "I've been trying to focus on work, on everything else, but I keep coming back to what you said. And I paused, searching for the right words. "I'm not sure I can do this. I don't want things to get complicated between us. You're my boss, Liam. I can't afford to let this get in the way of what I came here to do." Liam's expression shifted slightly. He stepped closer, but not too close, a space that still felt comfortable but electric. "I never wanted to complicate things for you, Grace," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it before. I've spent so many years building this company, controlling everything down to the smallest detail. But with you, it's different. You make me want to step outside of that control. And I can't just ignore what I feel anymore." I stared at him, still unsure of how to respond. "You've got so much on your plate already, Liam," I said quietly, "and I'm just starting out. What happens if this goes wrong? What if I fail?" Liam shook his head, his eyes intense. "Grace, you won't fail. I know you. You're more than capable. But more than that." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I don't want to hold you back. I want to be the one who supports you, no matter what happens. No matter where this goes." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before, a side that didn't fit the meticulously crafted CEO image he'd always shown. And suddenly, it was like everything I had been pushing away, all my feelings for him, came rushing forward. I had been holding myself back, scared of what could go wrong. But now, with his words hanging in the air, it felt like I couldn't ignore this any longer. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "What are you asking me, Liam?" I whispered, afraid of what he might say but unable to turn back now. Liam stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm asking you to take a chance on me, Grace. I'm asking you to be with me, to let me in." For a moment, all I could do was stare at him. His eyes, those stormy gray eyes, were filled with something I hadn't expected, hope. Was I ready for this? Was I ready to step into something with him that could change everything? Something I couldn't control, but as I looked at him, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about me, about us. And maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. "I don't know what's going to happen," I said slowly, my heart in my throat. "But I can't ignore what I feel either." I took a shaky breath. "I'm willing to see where this goes." Liam's expression softened, and for the first time, I saw a real smile tug at his lips. "You won't regret this, Grace," he said quietly. The rest of the afternoon felt surreal. I had made my decision. I was going to give Liam and this strange connection between us a chance. But as we both dove into work, focusing on the upcoming campaign, the weight of it all began to settle in. The power dynamics had just shifted. I was no longer just his employee. Now, there was something more, something deeper, and I couldn't help but wonder what that meant for our future. The next few days were filled with an unsettling mix of excitement and anxiety. Liam and I had started talking more outside of work, slowly getting to know each other beyond the confines of the office. But every time we were around others, that professional barrier went back up. We both knew the stakes. The challenge now wasn't just about the campaign. It was about navigating this new, uncharted territory between us. The night before the final campaign presentation, I found myself standing on the rooftop of the office building, staring out over the city. My mind was racing, about work, about Liam, about the future. I didn't hear him approach until he was right behind me. "Grace." Liam's voice was soft but strong. "Are you okay?" I nodded, trying to hide my nerves. "I'm just thinking about everything. Tomorrow's a big day, and with everything that's changed, I'm not sure I can handle it all." Liam stepped closer, his presence calming. "You're more than ready for this. Don't let the fear take over." I turned to face him, looking into his eyes. "What if I'm scared of what comes after tomorrow?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Liam took a step forward and gently cupped my face in his hands. "We'll face it together," he said, his voice steady, one step at a time. In that moment, everything felt clearer. I wasn't alone in this anymore. The days leading up to the campaign presentation felt like an emotional rollercoaster. On one hand, I had this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I had earned this opportunity. But on the other hand, everything between Liam and me had shifted. It wasn't just about business anymore. We had crossed a line. And now I was faced with navigating the murky waters of both my career and my feelings for him. The morning of the presentation, I was a bundle of nerves. I had gone over the slides 100 times, double-checked every detail, and still, my stomach churned. Today was the day that could change everything. And there was something else that weighed heavily on me. Liam Grayson. Despite everything that had happened between us, the confessions, the conversations, the growing connection, I couldn't shake the feeling that the future of our relationship hinged on this presentation. If I failed, would it change everything between us? Could I still look him in the eye if I let him down professionally? The elevator ride to the top floor felt like the longest one of my life. My mind raced, going through every possible scenario. But I couldn't let the fear of failure stop me. I had to do this. When I arrived at the conference room, the team was already there. Liam stood at the front of the room, going over the agenda with a few of the other department heads. His eyes flicked to me as I walked in, and for a split second, the tension between us felt like it could be cut with a knife. I could feel his gaze on me, but I didn't dare to meet it. I focused on the task at hand, setting up my slides and mentally preparing for the pitch. I had worked too hard to let anything distract me. And then, when the time came, it was my turn to present. I stepped to the front, took a deep breath, and began. The presentation went off without a hitch. I moved through each slide with confidence, explaining our campaign strategies, the projected outcomes, and how we planned to handle potential obstacles. I didn't allow myself to second-guess anything. For the first time in weeks, I was fully in control. As I reached the final slide, I could feel all eyes on me. Liam sat at the head of the table, watching me intently, his expression unreadable. "Any questions?" I asked, finishing my pitch. There was a pause. The room fell into an almost deafening silence. I waited for feedback, trying to maintain my composure, but deep down, my heart was pounding. And then, finally, Liam spoke. "This is impressive," he said, his voice calm, but I could hear the hint of approval in it. "You've managed to cover all bases. And the approach is fresh. Well done, Grace." My heart skipped a beat. I was still trying to catch my breath when he turned to the rest of the room. "We'll implement this immediately. I'll schedule a follow-up with each of you on Monday to discuss next steps." The meeting ended, but the tension still lingered. I was waiting for more, for something. A glance, a smile, anything that would let me know where I stood with him after everything that had happened between us. But as I walked out of the conference room, Liam didn't speak to me. He didn't approach me. He didn't say a word. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I couldn't focus on anything else. Had I done enough? The words, "well done," echoed in my head. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't until later that afternoon that I received another email from Liam. It was short, like most of his emails, but it sent my heart racing nonetheless. "Grace, please come to my office. We need to talk about the next phase of the campaign. 4 p.m. It wasn't the first time I had been summoned to his office. But something felt different this time. The anticipation gnawed at me as the clock inched closer to 4. When I knocked and entered his office, Liam was sitting at his desk, his usual posture as composed as ever. He looked up when I entered, his expression still unreadable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, he finally broke the silence. "You did well today," he said, his tone steady but sincere. "I'm impressed with the presentation. You've got a real knack for this." I exhaled, the weight in my chest lifting just slightly. "Thank you, Liam," I replied. "I've been working hard on it." He nodded, his gaze never leaving mine. "You've exceeded my expectations, Grace. But there's more to this than just work." My pulse quickened again. What was he going to say? "Over the past few days, I've been thinking," he continued, standing up and walking toward me, "about what we've discussed, about the connection between us. I'm not someone who takes these things lightly, but I need to know if we're on the same page here." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" Liam stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "I'm not going to pretend that what's between us is just professional. I want something more, Grace. I want you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had been waiting for him to say something like this, but hearing it out loud felt like a tidal wave crashing into me. "I can't just pretend this is business anymore," he continued, his voice steady but filled with something else. "I want you in every way, Grace, but I won't push you into something you're not ready for. I stood there, stunned. This was happening. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had worked so hard to get to where I was, to build my career, to prove myself. And now, here was Liam Grayson, the man who had made my heart race from the very first moment I met him, telling me that he wanted me. But could I afford to let it go further? Could I risk everything I had worked for just to follow my heart? I don't know, Liam, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. For us. Liam's gaze softened, and he took another step toward me. But this time, he didn't push. Take your time, Grace. I'm not going anywhere, and when you're ready, we can figure this out. The tension between us was palpable, but it was different now. It wasn't about professional barriers anymore. It was about something real, something we both had to decide. For the first time, I realized that the hardest decision wasn't going to be about my career. It was going to be about my heart. The following days felt like walking through a fog. The campaign was moving forward, and I was doing everything I could to make sure it succeeded. But my mind kept drifting back to Liam and what he had said. His words echoed in my thoughts, like a constant reminder of the uncharted territory we were treading. I want you, but I won't push you into something you're not ready for. That simple declaration was the heaviest weight on my shoulders. I didn't know what to do with it. The professional side of me told me to keep my head down, focus on the work, and not let anything distract me. But the other side, the side that had fallen for Liam Grayson, the man I had once admired from afar, couldn't ignore what was in my heart. The thing was, I had never been good at balancing the two worlds. The pragmatic part of me wanted to protect my career, keep things strictly professional, but Liam had shaken me in ways I wasn't prepared for. And I couldn't help but wonder, what if I gave in? What if I let myself feel something real for the first time? That Friday, everything came to a head. The campaign had officially launched, and things were moving at lightning speed. I was racing from meeting to meeting, barely keeping up with the demands of the project. But amidst all the chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. I had been avoiding Liam, not intentionally, but because I didn't know how to act around him. Every time we were in the same room, the air between us was thick with unspoken tension. I wanted to talk to him, to figure out what we were doing, but I was scared. I was scared that if I acknowledged it, I would lose myself in this whirlwind. That afternoon, just as I was finishing up a call with the marketing team, I received a message from him. Grace, come to my office. We need to talk. That was it. No details. Just, we need to talk. I took a deep breath, grabbed my things, and walked to his office. When I arrived, the door was already slightly ajar. I knocked softly and stepped inside. Liam was sitting at his desk, staring out the window. His usual composed demeanor was still there, but there was something else in his expression, a certain vulnerability that made my heart skip. Grace, he said without turning, his voice low. Come in. I shut the door behind me and walked in. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was almost unbearable. Finally, Liam stood up, walked around his desk, and faced me. I've been thinking about everything, he said quietly, his gaze intense, about what we're doing, and about where this could go. I swallowed, trying to steady my breath. This was it, the moment I had been avoiding. You don't have to keep pretending, Grace, he continued, his voice sincere. I know this isn't easy for you. I know you're trying to figure out how this works with your career. And I respect that. I nodded slowly, feeling my heart race. How did he know? Liam stepped closer, his voice soft but steady. I don't want to rush you, but I also don't want to keep dancing around this anymore. I care about you, Grace. I want to be with you. But only if you want the same thing. For the first time in days, everything felt still. My mind went blank for a second. And for a moment, I let myself feel the weight of his words. I wanted him too. I realized then that I was tired of running from what was right in front of me. I'm scared, Liam, I admitted, my voice trembling. I don't know what this means for my career. For us. But I can't keep pretending that this doesn't matter. Liam's expression softened. He reached out and gently took my hand. I don't want you to pretend. Grace, I just want you to be honest with me. With yourself. I felt the warmth of his touch. And for the first time in a long while, I realized that I wasn't alone in this. We were in this together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and newfound clarity. After that conversation, Liam and I began navigating our relationship, cautiously. Yes, but with honesty. There were still moments of uncertainty. Moments when I wondered if I was making the right choice. But through it all, Liam was there, supporting me, pushing me to be the best version of myself. Not just for the company, but for us. Our professional lives didn't stop. Of course, we worked together closely on the campaign, and our team's success reflected that. But we found a way to balance the line between work and personal connection. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. It was a quiet evening in early summer when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Liam and I were sitting on the rooftop of the building, enjoying the view of the city below us. The sun had just set, casting a warm orange glow over everything. It felt like the perfect moment. Liam turned to me, his expression calm but his eyes filled with something deeper. Grace, I've been thinking. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, that sounds serious. He chuckled, but his gaze didn't leave mine. No, really, we've come a long way since we first met. And I think it's time we make a decision. About everything. I held my breath, waiting for him to continue. I don't want to just have you as my partner at work. He said softly, I want you to be my partner in life. For good. My heart stopped. Liam, I whispered, unsure of what he was asking. He smiled gently and reached into his pocket. Grace Stone, will you marry me? My heart swelled with emotion. This man, this incredible man who had been my boss, my confidant, my partner, the one who had taken a chance on me, both professionally and personally, was asking me to spend the rest of my life with him. Tears sprang to my eyes, and I nodded without hesitation. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, and as he kissed me gently, I knew that this was the start of something beautiful, something that would grow stronger with time, something that we would build together. The wedding was simple but beautiful. Surrounded by our friends and family, we stood under the soft light of the evening sun, promising to love, support, and challenge each other for the rest of our lives. The journey that began with a mix-up in a black car had led to this moment, a moment I would cherish for the rest of my life. And as we exchanged vows, I realized that, sometimes, the best things in life come when you least expect them. Together, Liam Grayson and I had built a life based on trust, honesty, and love, and that was enough.